Welcome to Good Goodbyes, the funeral facts podcast. We are really glad you found us. In this podcast, me, Simon, a funeral director,
And me, Tina, I'm an independent celebrant.
are going to discuss all things funeral in an informal space to demystify what happens when we say goodbye.
Based on your questions and queries, Si and myself are two industry professionals that are going to chat through the hows, whats, and wherefores. We actively work in the funeral industry in Devon in the UK. So, we hope you enjoy the episode ahead. Welcome to Good Goodbyes. Hello, this is Tina. Welcome to Good Goodbyes, and I'm delighted to have a guest with me for this episode, Jennifer, who I'm going to allow to introduce herself. So, Jen, could you talk about yourself and where you work and what you're up to at the moment?
I certainly can. Hi, Tina. Thank you so much for having me. For those who don't know, my name is Jennifer. My nickname is actually the Glam Reaper, which I find quite hilarious. And it was actually the British media who gave it to me. Thank you very much, guys. Way back when my first book came out. So I'm from Ireland. You might gather from my accent. I'm from Dublin. And about 16 years ago, I started a business called Farewell Funeral Planners. Pretty much because two of my friends passed away. They were in their 20s, and I just felt I was a wedding planner at the time, and I just felt that people needed a bit more help and support during funeral planning that was aside from what a funeral director already provides. And so I just started looking into it, and 16 years later, here we are. I'm writing my fourth book. I have spoken on lots of stages. I do my own workshops. We just launched our international, emphasize that, international on-demand Celebrant service, Celebrant training service. And yeah, between writing, I have my own podcast, between writing and speaking, which I like to do a lot. Between writing and speaking and training others, I am an event planner. I am like a wedding planner, but for funerals. And I'm a celebrant. For those who may not know, I know you know, Tina, but for those who don't know, a celebrant is like a priest, but not a priest, or a rabbi, but not a rabbi. So somebody to officiate a funeral. So I do both of those, and then I train other people up to do the same. Spreading the good word, which is what we're doing today. So
Fantastic. And I'm going to put all of Jennifer's things into the show notes, so you'll be able to find her in all these different kind of places. I've asked
all the ways,
all the ways you can get to her and enjoy what she does. But I love the way that you're such an advocate for all of this stuff. And I reached out because one of the things we've been talking about recently on Good Goodbyes is digital legacy. And I listened to one of your episodes on YouTube about it, and it was so God, you covered such a wealth of stuff. And I thought we must have Jennifer on to start to talk about digital legacy, because I could see you'd done so much research into it. So it's a big opening question, but when people are listening to this and thinking, oh, digital legacy, what's that then? What would you say?
So that it is a big question.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah, take a big breath. And I do like to talk. So I'm going to try and keep this a little bit intact. This is something I've personally been obsessed with the smallest degree since I began, because I am of that age. I'm 42, where we had the phone where you just picked up, and it was attached to a wire, and you called your friend, and nobody else could be on the internet at the time, and it was a whole thing. And so my generation has seen that to now I have an iPhone that is glued to my right hand, and everything is online and everything is up in the cloud and all of this. So it's been something I've just been absolutely fascinated with. But it is, and I will explain as to why, it is such a huge topic, especially in the funeral space, that I would have had to commit 16 years ago to just doing this. And I always say my three pillars are the environment, digital legacy, and planning, pre-planning. And I went with pre-planning, but I still keep my toes and my ears and my everything in the other two categories. But I do talk about on my YouTube channel. We do have several episodes in the digital space, and actually season 5 is coming out this month, and we're dig even deeper actually. But there's a load of books as well that you can purchase on this as well. But digital legacy, honestly, can be such a broad topic. It is to me, and what I think the video that you particularly are talking about was a workshop I decided to do at the start of this year, which I did it for free. So it's on there, you can access it, and I'm happy to share the workbook, supporting workbook from it with your listeners. Because for me, it's about getting the information to people. Because this is basic information, and honestly, it should be a bit more widely, out there. It's something so small. Like, I actually only got an email this morning from Google. So I have several Gmail accounts because of the business and personal and everything. And a lot of people do. There is a part of your Gmail, your Google Mail, that you can put an inactive account manager, it's called. And I got an email from that account this morning saying, just reminding you that your inactive account manager details are this. And basically what it means is that after a certain amount of inactivity, I think it's like 6 months, after that email has not been used for 6 months, a notification will come to me and whoever else I nominate. And if I've passed away, it allows them to close it down or access it. So you choose who the person who you want to control your Gmail account after you pass away. Now, some people might want to keep it private and close it down, and some people might want to keep it open. And some people might want a little bit of both, like me. Part of me is like, do I really want them to see everything I've written? It's a lot for anybody to ever troll through all your emails, but it gives them access to maybe photos. It gives them access to billings, accounts you've signed up for, again, depending on what you use that account for. So like, and this is going to sound like a big task. And what I try and do in the workshop is break it down into like bite size or like just tasks that aren't going to overwhelm. So setting up your inactive account manager is number one that I would say. Number two, which is a huge one, is your Apple iPhone. Now, I'm not sure, because I'm an Apple product holder, I don't know about Samsung, but I'm sure they must have similar. But Apple do have a digital legacy. And again, there is, I'm not going to try and do it on the YouTube or on the video here, but there is, I explain it in detail on this document, this PDF, how you can nominate a digital legacy holder for you. So it allows, it's very simple. It's sort of in your settings and you just nominate somebody. So I was able to nominate my best friend here in America, which is where I live, and also nominate my mum my mum in Ireland. So that when I pass, now one would hope my mum passes before me, even though that would break my heart, that she gets access to my information, my phone. She gets to kind of keep my phone. There's limitations on all of this, right? But our information, like, we don't keep our photos in cardboard boxes and in albums anymore. They're on our phones. They're on an Instagram account. They're in our Facebook. They're everywhere but in paper form. And so these little tips are just, I mean, they're only small things, but they can actually make such a huge difference. Like, I have sat down with families where we're planning, a memorial and stuff, and they are trying to dig through photos, and they didn't have access to the deceased's phone, and they didn't have access to their Instagram account, and so they're trying to like screenshot the photos or trying to somehow access them, and it's really heartbreaking. I mean, I'm a big fan of pre-planning as well, and to me, pre-planning is also doing your digital legacy. But for the case of this workshop that I did in January, I actually broke it up. So because I felt like certain people want to do digital legacy, they don't want to plan their funeral. So I do think it's all under the one umbrella, but the digital is really, really important. So the Apple thing, really, really great. The Gmail also really, really great, I think. And then you've got Facebook now. Snapchat and TikTok, as far as I'm aware, don't have any sort of when you die, what happens to you. Instagram do have, they don't have a legacy feature. So even though Facebook and Instagram are both owned by Meta, what's interesting is Facebook have a legacy contact. So again, I can nominate Tina to be my legacy contact, as long as you're on Facebook. That's the only thing as well. You have to be on Facebook. But I can nominate you, and you can then, when I pass, now you do have to provide proof, by the way. You don't just get to pretend like somebody's passed away. There has to be death certificates and stuff like that shown. But it just, again, it's allowing that little bit more access. In some ways, it's like having keys to somebody's house. Sorry, I was just going to say,
just listening into what you're saying about the impact emotionally it has on families. I mean, my own mum died 6 years ago, and she wasn't very tech savvy, but she did have an iPad and she did do a lot on it, and she took a lot of photographs. And yeah, we couldn't get into any of it. Couldn't get into any of it. And lots of back and forth telephone conversations with my dad and Apple, and even took the iPad into the Apple store. And just honestly, no joy.
No.
And the upset it caused him, it just made me so sad. And it did make me think, exactly as you were saying, just a wee bit of planning would have made a big difference.
It really is. And I'll tell you, and this is, and again, the advice I give, like, and I'm very clear, I am not a digital executor or a guru or anything like that. I am very much a lay person who happens to work in the funeral profession. And these are tips and tricks that I've learned. So, you know, always check your legality of everything. But like, for example, so this could be slightly illegal. I don't think so. But when I was last home with my parents, my dad only has one of these like little brick phones. Like literally he's got a phone from like the 90s. Like I don't even know how it still works. So he's useless. Like there's no photos, there's no nothing on his. But my mom has an iPhone, but like that, like she would come to my brother or me and sort of say, here, can you change this? Can you do this? And she asked me to change something. Something had been rotating, I think, on her or something. So I had to try and fix it. So I went into her legacy contacts and I added myself. So now I'm saying that that's illegal because I did it without her consent. But I handed her the phone back to her. And you get sent a message saying, you know, such and such has added you or whatever. And I added her and I told her, I said, just so you know, we're each other's legacy contacts. She was like, oh, right, okay. Not really knowing what it is or whatever. But like that, especially I think when it comes to our elderly parents, and my parents aren't elderly, I have to say that just in case they're listening. But when it comes to our parents who are elderly, sometimes you do have to take matters into your own hands a little bit. And just sort of, you know, encourage /
guide,
do the deed.
Encourage and guide them a little. Yeah, no, I can hear where you're coming from, really. And I think sometimes, you know, people get in a place of overwhelm. You know, my mum talked a lot about her funeral plans and what she wanted, and it was great. You know, not great that she died. It was, you know, we miss her terribly. But what was so helpful was just like I could say solidly what she wanted. You know, I knew because I had a conversation with her. My dad never wants to talk about it. So you have these differences, don't you, on how you can guide people to helping you in the bit afterwards when there is all the admin, actually.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It is such an overwhelming thing to have happen to you. And for some bizarre reason, we're all wandering around believing it's never going to happen to us. And we're, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss to other people, but it never really resonates. Now, I will say it is interesting though, and there's a statistic about this somewhere, and I must find it because I just think it's brilliant, is after a funeral, after attending a funeral, people have the tendency to change their lives more, go on that diet, effectively though, and make changes, break up with their person, walk out of the job that they hated. Like they do have a tendency to act on the things that they've been talking about more so than January 1st of the new year after a funeral, because they've been faced with mortality. They have a tendency to do stuff, and whether it's do a will, maybe take care of your digital legacy and stuff like that. But I love what you said there, because it's such a gift. Like I cannot express. I do free pre-planning workshops at retirement homes when I can, just because to me it's such a gift to give to your loved one, that when you pass, this is the plan to put into place. Like I sat down with my mum, similar to yourself, and I had, mostly because I was testing out, but I had, this is like over a decade ago, I had a pre-plan, which I offer free on my website. It's a PDF. It's a 42-page PDF, I think it is. So it's not for the faint of heart, and you don't have to do it all, but it's a 42-page PDF that if you sit down with whoever and you go through it, you will have done everything you need to do, so that when your loved one passes, all you have to do is hand this document to a funeral director, to somebody, and say, please make this happen. Nothing else, nothing less, just what's in this. And then you get to go and grieve, look after yourself. And of course, like, this isn't going to take away from all the legalities. I mean, that's a whole other, which again, again, kind of back to I love the digital, I love the environment, and I love the planning. We all have to choose what we're going to go into. I'm not I'm not an accountant, I'm not a lawyer, so I can only do my little bit in this world. But I just feel if you can leave this world in a clean package, your loved ones, it helps the grieving process so much more. Just to know, like, I mean, I've said this 100 times on podcasts, but just for an example, when I sat down to do my mum's pre-plan, and we cried, of course we did. I don't want her going anywhere. We cried, but we laughed. We laughed so hard, just bringing back all the memories and stuff. But one of the things she said, I said, okay, what song what music or what song specifically would you like? And she said, Rod Stewart's Maggie May. And I was like, what? Your name's not Maggie or May. Like, where is this coming from? And she was like, well, what song would you have picked for me? And I'm kind of cringing. I was like, well, obviously Wind Beneath My Wings. Because that's my song. That's how she makes me feel. She's the wind beneath my wings.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, corny song, but like, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And she just started laughing. She was like, Jen, no. She was like, no. Rod Stewart's Maggie May. Because she said, all my friends, it's upbeat and it's whatever. And most of us, I think like 90% of us would rather our funeral be about the life we lived than the years we don't get to see, no matter what age. Like, even when I wrote my first book, I was like, I would rather you celebrate the 30 years you knew me than the 60 you won't. Like, like, celebrate all those months. So I thought that was really fascinating. And it's just so lovely to know that I can just hand that PDF in to my friends, probably because now I work in the business,
It's a beautiful way to get to know somebody as well, because, in chatting to my mum, she was saying stuff and I was like, really? I didn't realize that. So you got to remember it now. Yeah. Don't mention this. And I was like, oh, okay, you make sure mention that. And my mum, she wasn't a big drinker, and there was in her mind, she didn't drink a lot of alcohol. There was one particular occasion that she got a bit tiddly, and she thought the whole thing was hilariously amusing. She lost her car keys, but in looking for her car keys and emptying her handbag, looking for her car keys, she'd hooked her car keys over the clothesline while she looked in her handbag. And so
hilarious.
I know, it was just so sweet. So she tells me this whole story that I hadn't really heard before, which was lovely. And also a particular poem that she liked. She said, oh, I'll read that. I like that. And I thought, oh, that's a bit corny. And she said, no, I want that. And I was like, okay, it's not my decision, it's not my do.
That's it.
And it was, really nice to get to know her in that way and the things that were important to her. So there's that bit to encourage people.
Yeah, exactly. We're all so unique and individual, and literally, like, I did a TEDx talk, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody if they watch it. It's only 5 minutes long, but it was really and truly about how unique we all are, and to stop sort of judging people on what we think they should choose, like, oh, you're going to choose this, or you're going to have a cheap casket, or you're having an expensive casket. Like, those days are gone. Like, it should be about, like, my big thing that I say now is, because there's two schools of thought I have found, is that people either think a funeral is for the living or for the dead. And I personally think it's for both. I think it should be absolutely cathartic and healing for the living. It should be like, send you on your way, ready to, grieve and be with that sadness. But it also should be like a beautiful tribute to the deceased. So the only way it can be an authentic tribute to the deceased is if it's the deceased who pretty much pre-planned the whole thing. Because exactly as you said, you get to know somebody. Like my mom, she's more than my mom. She's my brother's mom. She's a grandmother. She's a wife. She's a best friend. She's the lady who comes into the doctor's office. She's the lady who haggles over, the price of something.
So many things to so many
people. Yeah. And I will say, just on what you said about like getting to know people as well, I've done these pre-planning workshops, and what I found really interesting is a lot of women come, which I'm like, come on, men, let's go. But a lot of women come to my workshops, and they say that they take the workbook home, and they, because they kind of get motivated at the workshop, and then they're like, right, me and my husband are going to do this. So they sit down and they give the thing to the husband and say, right, now you have to fill out yours and I'm going to fill out mine, and we're going to come together and see what we do. And I love like hearing the feedback, because like the emails are like in classic, I think, female male relationships or marriages, the man is sitting and he's doing his homework and he's doing it, and she's over his shoulder, what what, pointing finger. What do you mean you're doing this? What do you mean you're doing that? I was like, yes, that sounds like most marriages I know. But anyway, and then of course the husband's like, will you let me just do it? Like, you asked me to do it, will you let me just do it? But what I found the feedback from is a lot of them are like, I never knew he wanted to be cremated and tossed, his ashes tossed in the, I don't know, the Irish Sea, whatever. I never knew he wanted to be buried with his great grandparents. Everyone else has been cremated since. Whatever it is, the amount of times people have said, I learned X, Y, and Z from this exercise.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And circling back to the digital legacy thing, like that is a part of it, because you can only imagine, if you lost all your partners' access to all their emails, all their photos, like how devastating that would be. Also, depending on a lot of marriages, there's one person who does the bills, who like pays for everything or has access to everything. It's not always the same. So yeah.
And I've certainly come across that. And when I was in the hospice, I really admired a particular lady. She's on I'll put a link in the show notes. She's in the hospice care. She's still on their website, I think, and you can kind of see a little vignette of her talking. But she was dying a lot younger than she'd anticipated. And so she did a blue folder, and it was the kind of home admin folder, because she was the one. She paid all the bills. She did all the things, and she was like, I can't rest until I know that they know who I phone when the boiler breaks down, and they know who we go to for the MOT of the car. And she just put it all in this folder, and she felt a lot better. At the same time, she had teenagers in her life, and she left them a video recorded digital legacy. And I can only imagine what it will be like for those young people to listen to that. But nevertheless, she really wanted to leave like a version of a birthday card, and she did all these videos for up until they were 21. And I thought, wow, that's just so amazing. And she was, I think it really helped her with her journey actually out of this life, to do that. But they're sitting somewhere, and someone will need to digitally access them as well.
That's it. Yeah. Like you need to, and there's a lot of apps, and there's a lot. My God, in the 16 years I've been doing this, the amount of sort of innovation and new companies and new products that are coming out with variety of different things.
Yeah.
And the scary thing, and again, as I said at the beginning, I could talk and I don't want to deviate too much and confuse your listeners too much, but the downside and the scary part of all the digital stuff, like I'm trying to focus on the positive, but there is a downside and a scary part, is that you have a lot of these startup companies, and it's sort of, you put your faith and your storage of your digital assets in there in good faith, and obviously in hope, and that they survive you. But at the end of the day, like the rate of startups surviving over failing is not great. Like they say if a startup lasts 3 years, there's a chance it actually might survive. And like I've seen so many of these memorial sites come and go. So like, for example, you might have done a memorial website for your mom, and you chose a company to do it with, and now all of a sudden they're gone bust. Like what happens to all that data? What happens to those assets? And that's a huge problem that I think needs to be addressed, and more of the big tech companies honestly need to be addressing death and mortality. Like you had apparently Elon Musk, when he took over Twitter, he deleted I think millions of accounts because maybe they were inactive or not being used, and once it's deleted, it's gone forever. And if you were somebody who had lost somebody and you interacted with their Facebook page, and now suddenly it's been deleted because the graveyard has gotten too big or too full, you've just lost a slice of your memories with somebody, and not giving people the opportunity to download that information. And so it's what happens to all this data that we're putting out? Like that lady, if she'd have chosen a Dropbox, now Dropbox is pretty indestructible, a bit like a Google and a Facebook, but who knows? Look what's happening in America right now. Like there's just, it's all to play for. We just don't know. There's such uncertainty happening. And then you've got this evolution of AI, which is another huge topic, and again, part of digital legacy. And I've spoken about this because, again, I'm fascinated with it. I've spoken about it on my podcast, and there's a video on my website as well. I'm not sure it's on my YouTube because I think it was somebody else's, but it's on my website anyway. And it's a panel discussion of me with a lawyer and a data engineer talking about AI and its use in this space, because it can absolutely, incredibly, again, the positives and the negatives, help people grieving. But it can also massively negatively impact. Like, people have died by suicide believing their AI bots were real and that they were encouraged to. And then there's this whole artificial, like a hologram where you could have your mom appear to you, to your dad, in a hologram version with her voice, with her likeness. Like, how wild is that? And so now they're even talking about, and what was fascinating, again, I keep going and digging into it, but again, I have a day job, and I know this is part of it, but you just wouldn't come out. The law is never going to catch up. The law is never going to catch up with this. This is moving so fast. It is terrifying to watch. And again, I feel like I'm that age that I've seen the cusp of what tech is doing. This is just moving so fast that, like, they're talking about having DNRs. So DNRs in America are like, do not resuscitate. I'm not sure, actually.
It's the same in the UK, actually. It's do not resuscitate. And
so now they're talking about
escalation plans, which is another way of talking about that. Yeah.
Well, so now they're talking about DNRs being do not reanimate.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that, like, you can, because I don't know, again, I'm like 10 years now, I'm living in the States, but I'm home like 4 or 5 times a year. But so, sometimes I get confused as to what side of the ocean I'm on. But there was an ad, I think it was in the US over here. There was an ad with Audrey Hepburn's likeness it was for Galaxy chocolate. And again, like, we didn't even know AI existed back when she was, on screens. So it's like her management, her legacy holders, like, they didn't even know to sort of fight this. So, like, who benefits from it? Who has copyright over it?
Who owns her image? Who owns that? Yeah, it's a lot.
It's just, so it is. So again, I don't want to like overwhelm anybody.
No, but it's
stick to the start of the episode.
Yeah, it is a fascinating place to maybe stop in a strange way when we're talking about where the future will take us, because I think people just try and stay aware. I mean, I certainly know of people who have never unfriended their dead person on Facebook, that you can't do it.
Yep.
And also then when they get those memory posts, which is like, you were doing this 5 years ago, and they get those memory posts from those accounts, or they get those memory posts with those people tagged in. That's a big part of how they manage their grief.
Yeah. Which I will say on that note, though, I will say the tips I gave at the start, and again, I'll provide the workbook so people can actually cohesively see it as opposed to listen to my ramblings, is typically when somebody passes away on Facebook, they should be, the page should be made into a memory page. And so therefore you won't get those, you won't get the typical thing. So if you added me as a friend, for example, you'll get, memories with, and add a friend and all of the other things. And it's her birthday. When it's a memorialized page, so if I've died and they've memorialized me, it's a different algorithm. Everything sort of changes. And so that is better for those who are grieving, because it is now official, like this person has passed, and you can still interact with the page, but it's limited.
It's in a different way.
There are benefits.
Yeah, it's a bit kinder, isn't it, to our feelings?
Exactly, because I had the exact experience that your friend, when one of my friends passed away, it showed up things, and it was so raw at the time. It was so upsetting. So it's it's hard.
I can't thank you enough, because you've given us so much food for thought. Thank you, brilliant. And lots of things that people, if this tempts you, listeners, there's loads of things that you can go and listen to that Jennifer has done. So I'm definitely going to signpost to loads of stuff. And I think it's only the tip of the iceberg that we're talking about here.
It really is. Tina, we could talk in next week and everything could have changed.
We'd be going for 24 hours like some sort of sponsored charity thing. So no, absolutely brilliant. But I'm going to end.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm going to end with asking you, of course, as I do many of our guests, about your own funeral, Jennifer. What have you got in mind, and what would you like to have?
Well, I've had, do you know what? I've been interviewed so much on like TV and radio and then on my own podcast when I'm chatting to people that this is almost, I feel like this is just common knowledge. So I feel like I'm going to have to change it just to shake it up for people. But I very iconically want It's Raining Men played at my funeral.
Excellent
Very
choice.
much the RuPaul version, not the Jerry Halliwell and not the Weather Girls. It has to
Even
be the RuPaul
better.
Martha Wash version. Yeah. So it's going to be a party. I definitely want that. There's so many. My focus is definitely going to be on food and drink. So I actually talk to a funeral director. I try and like help funeral directors sort of help families. And one of the things I'm always trying to help them with is to see value, is like to see what the family values. Like, so my best friend, we're both in this business. He sees value in the venue and in like a quartet and like live music and all of that sort of pomp and circumstance, right? And I'm not. I'm like, no, you can play my iPhone. I don't want you spending money on the live music. Play my iPhone. I don't want a casket if at all physically possible. I don't want to be in band. I want food and I want money behind the bar. I want people to have a party. I want people to talk about me. I want music played, all my favorite songs. I do have a Winnie the Pooh video. Do have a Winnie the Pooh video that I want played. Loved Winnie growing up. And there's a special cocktail called a lemon downy. Now, I will say this, again, I know I could talk for days and hours, and you're like, Jen, wind it up. About a year and a half ago, I got to celebrate 15 years being in business, and I threw a bit of a pseudo funeral. So amazingly, incredibly, I've almost lived through the funeral that I want to hold for myself, like a living funeral. So we served a lemon downies, we played It's Raining Men, we played the Winnie the Pooh video. We did, lots of other things as well. But those would be the iconic things. And I will insist. Oh, one of the things actually just to say is living in America, one of the things I'm really pedantic about is do not fly my body home. I love home, but cremate me over here, wherever I pass. I don't care where it is because I travel a lot. Wherever I die, cremate me, or the nearest environmentally friendly version. So if that's water cremation, whatever in that place that I'm past, and then scatter my ashes a little bit here and mostly at home in Ireland. I'm pedantic about. I think it's such a waste. Repatriation. I absolutely, it's similar like with embalming, which are all other conversations. But I just feel, for me, I don't want that money spent. I'd rather my parents fly first class over to see me, say goodbye to me physically wherever I am, and then cremate me. So
such a timely thing to be talking about. So I've got a repatriation episode coming up actually soon. But
there you go.
It's been a joy talking to you. Thanks to all of our listeners, and we will be putting all the bits and pieces in the show notes. So you have been listening to Tina and Jennifer, and this has been Good Goobyes.
You've been listening to Good Goobyes, the Funeral Facts podcast. Please do like, subscribe, comment and share. Drop any questions on our social media, on Instagram, or in the text option in the show notes.
Si and I are qualified professionals, but we always advise our clients to seek any additional support from medical practitioners if they need to. And we hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay well and be kind to one another.